Welcome to KidMin Backstage, the place where we talk about kids ministry and take a peek behind the scenes. We try to share a little bit of what we've learned that works for us and some of our failures so you can avoid them. We release a new episode every Friday, and this is your backstage pass to see the magic or disaster that happens behind the scenes of our kids ministry. I'm your host, Gabe Baker, and today I'm joined by Brother Miles. How's it going?
It's good. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah. I told you the other night. I was like, "Okay, you're up." Haven't had you in a while, so time to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about being on top of our game.
Being on top of your game. So, at the top of your game. And so, a lot of times, you talk about athletes or something being at the top of their game or their prime or whatever. And so, that's we're kind of referencing, being there, being on that cutting edge. And so, I just saw that thing change. It kind of distracted me there. So, being on top of your game. So, I wrote some notes here, and I was trying to memorize kind of my opening there. But ministry leadership requires a consistent dedication to basically your spiritual and your personal growth. That's something that's required. You have to have that consistency in ministry leadership. And then when we're talking about being at the top of your game, success isn't accidental. And we, of course, have had this conversation before, but success is not accidental. It's intentional. And so it's a result of intentional habits, which we like to talk about that a lot on this podcast, is habits. So intentional habits and disciplined choices. And so being on top of your game doesn't mean that you're perfect, because we are far from it. and we're not always on top of our game either. Not making any claims here, but being on top of your game isn't about being perfect. It's about maintaining effectiveness and being authentic in your calling, in your ministry. And then finally, I'm doing pretty good on my notes. You see that? And then finally, being on top of your game in leadership or in ministry, it starts with you as a leader.
You have to take care of yourself in order to properly minister to somebody else.
Yes.
The thought in my mind is, because when we're doing a work, whatever it is, Sunday school, bus ministry, or any aspect of the church, we're being used. So which means that takes away from us in some way, whether it's energy, whether it's mental energy in some way, so we got to be in order to be able to give something, you have to have something to give.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
You can't be burnt out. If you're burnt out, you don't got nothing to give.
Yeah, exactly. If you're not full, if you're empty, then you can't spill over and help others. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's kind of our first point is talking about your own self. And so what I put, and this is a popular title topic, I guess, but I put master your morning routine. And I want to kind of talk about it in two different ways. One, the way that we're talking about is master your morning routine just in your daily life.
Yeah. And
then I also wanted to talk about it here in a second also on Sunday morning, specifically, because this is a Sunday school podcast after all. And so anyway, mastering your morning routine. I think that high-performing individuals almost always have some kind of, even if it's not set in stone routine. I mean, I think that a lot of high-performing individuals do have a very rigorous set in stone routine. But I think even there's some people that I can think of right now that don't have a rigorous set in stone morning routine, but they have these, I'll use the word, organic habits. Just these habits that, yes, they made some kind of decisions, but they're habits that make them successful in their morning routine. Their mornings might not always look the same, but they have a habit of, like my dad, for example, he's not somebody that maybe we would look at and like, oh boy, he's got a great rigorous morning routine. He doesn't go out and jog every morning or anything like that. but he prays.
Yeah.
And it might not be every single morning. It might be, I'm not sure, but it's pretty consistent. It's a habit. And so things like that, where you're developing those, things in your morning.
Mm-hmm. Like kind of even said with your opening, there's a massive power and consistency. I think that a lot of people, at least I know, at least in the beginning of my 20s, I did not quite understand that power of being consistent. They're way better than just those super highs on fires and all the time, but then a couple weeks later you'd crash and you'd burn out, kind of just like how we're at the New Year's right now. Everybody's all making New Year's resolutions and
let's go.
Let's go. Probably by February about 7th, everybody will be gone. But there's just I know we talked about it last time as far as there's just power in that little consistency. Just one
over and over,
just like how an ant eats elephant, just one bite at a time. Just keep on trucking. Just keep on going.
Keep on going.
You'll make a lot, kind of like even with the tortoise and the hare, you'll make it a lot farther if you just keep on going.
Just steady Eddie. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've referenced it before, but Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect. It's a book. It's incredible. It's a very, very good book, and that's what it's all about. Is he talks about these small habits. He tells a story of like 4 friends, or maybe it's 3 friends. I think it's 3 friends, but he tells this like hypothetical story. I don't think it's true, but he talks about like one of them gets into cooking and like starts experimenting with all kinds of different recipes and stuff, and it's minor, but he's eating this stuff, and he starts getting fatter and fatter, and and then like along with that, I can't remember, something else like to do with his marriage or whatever, and then there's somebody else, he's like just focused on his career or something, I don't know. And then there's the middle guy that's like, he decides that he's going to cut back on his calories or something, and so he like, it's just like minuscule, he cuts back just a little bit, and then he decides he's going to stop listening to the news so much and start listening to self-development books and things on his way to work. And anyway, so it's all these minor things. And in a year, you don't really see a huge difference at all. You just see this guy, he's put on a little bit of weight, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the middle guy's, he starts exercising or whatever. But anyway, he talks about compound effects. So over the course of, I don't know what it was, 10 years or something. It's been a while since I read the book, but you see this drastic difference. Yeah. And he uses the example, he talks about, like I said, their marriage or something. Like one of them, their marriage just completely falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's all a result of these tiny little choices that were made, and then acting on those, just. So I think that, and money is a good example of that too.
Oh yeah.
It's so easy to just like, it's not a big deal. It's only $100, or it's $40, whatever, but it compounds.
It does.
And vice versa. It's like, I'm only saving, or I'm only investing this much. Yeah. But then that compounds.
After so many, if you just let it sit and just let it simmer, and then it. As far as compounding, I mean, the compound interest is your friend when it comes to money.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
When it's on, at least when it's on your side. If it's debt, then that's a different story.
It's a bad deal. Yeah. Well, and so going back to mastering your morning routine is, I think that as leaders, if we can, a lot of the stuff I talk about in the podcast has to do with the business world and stuff, and some of it maybe comes from my work environment. But I do think that we can take some lessons and just, let me back up. I think that maybe sometimes in church leadership, what happens is you maybe are voluntold, to do something, right? Yeah. And so you kind of get thrown into it, and this is kind of with me, this is how some of this has happened. Maybe you're effective in a certain area, and so then you're given more responsibility, and you have more influence, and you grow into different positions. Well, then, and the church grows, in size. Well, then sometimes you can look around and see like, okay, right now, if we were to, let's say, hire somebody, I don't work for the church, but if we were to hire somebody, would we hire that individual that has been there for years? Maybe not, because now we're looking at resumes, we're looking at habits, we're looking at what kind of track record does this person have. So in all of that, I think that we can take some examples from the business world in all these things about, master your morning routine and say, okay, I need to treat this like I would a Fortune 500 company. I need to be effective.
Yeah.
It's no longer just like, oh, hey, we're going to throw this Sunday school together. Now you need to be effective. And I think that we sell ourselves short sometimes. We don't raise the bar for ourselves.
Yeah.
So, and then, okay, coming back to mastering your morning routine on Sunday, and everybody's got a different process. Sunday morning, I'm guilty of this. Sunday morning shouldn't be the prep time. And so, unless it's for the next week.
Yeah.
But Sunday morning, one of the things is, like we have pre-service prayer. Our Sunday school goes out, when the preaching starts essentially. And so, but in pre-service prayer, a lot of us wear a lot of hats and really busy. I'm incredibly busy on Sunday mornings. But if we can take that moment and say, okay, today is Sunday school.
Yeah.
God, help me be effective. Help me to actually make a difference in somebody's life, Because if we can master that, even just on a Sunday, if we can master that part, we will make a difference.
Make a huge difference. Make a huge impact. There's no telling what difference it can make by just praying. I know that oftentimes right now we're in a transition with Sunday school as far as everything's going, but oftentimes one of my main focuses during prayer is God move in the altar call.
Yes.
So I want to, especially with all these bus kids, because we just never know what's going on in those bus kids' lives, who knows what's going to happen, what kind of impact and what kind of difference we could make. And I want to see God's hand touch those kids' hearts.
Oh, yes, man, absolutely. That makes me think of a saying I like, a quote is, when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. And so if we wait, because our altar calls are not always stellar, and we've had some good ones, and we've had some that were just kind of going through the motions. That's our disaster behind the scenes. But if we wait and we get to a Sunday school and we get to altar call and it's all of a sudden like, oh, wow, God is moving and kids are responding, and it catches us off guard, so to speak, and we're like, I mean, we can be surprised at something, that's fine, but it catches us off guard and our heart's not ready, and we don't know how to respond to that. It's too late.
Yeah.
And so that's where we got to prepare and do all of our, we do our part, God does his part, or the spiritual part. So if we can do everything, all the steps that we need to do and prepare our hearts, our minds, and get ready in that morning, then when we come to altar call, if the kids aren't responding, or whatever, it's not like, oh man, I prayed for nothing. I mean, it's not, it's not like you're going to lose out, right?
Yeah.
So, it's like the fighter that trains and man, I did all that for nothing. I didn't get in a fight, So we gotta master that morning routine just because this is what we do. This is how we do it. All right. So, number 2 I have is invest in continuous learning. So, any kind of leadership, and I have to be careful because this is something that I enjoy, and not everybody enjoys this part. And so, there's things I have to do that I don't enjoy, that I need to do, to make myself better. But I love reading, not everybody loves to read, but I think that everyone as a leader should read, or at least listen to audiobooks. That's
that's me. Yeah. That's me. I'm not a reader, but
yeah, I think that works too.
I'm a listener.
Especially if you have a commute or something, you
Yeah.
know, that's a great time to listen to like KidMin Backstage podcast or something. And we're gonna have to advertise some other ones on here. Some other Sunday school leaders have just recently started.
Oh, that's
some
awesome.
podcasts, so that's kind of cool. So we'll start doing that on the closing or something. But anyway, yeah. So I think that as leaders, we should be reading, and of course I read. I'm typically reading 3 to 5 books at once, and just constantly, and that's been since I was about 12 years old. So I'm a reader. But you should read or listen to audiobooks, and you don't have to do it that extreme, but just to get better. I mean, that makes you better, you know, as you get inspired and you get ideas, you know, that kind of thing.
You got to constantly push yourself to grow. Otherwise, you're never going to grow. You'll just end up plateauing and just staying at that exact same level, unless either you push yourself or somebody else volunteers you, and then you'll get pushed.
Yes.
That's I'll have to admit, I've been voluntold, and it was a great learning experience.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's probably, you know, we are not here to talk about preachers or pastors, but that is probably a big part of a pastor's job, you know, as a leader, is to volunteer some people, you know, and say, hey, you know what, you could do that. You could be an usher, you know, and and I think even as leaders in, you know, Sunday school and in kids ministry, we can do that, and we do that some. I mean, you know, right now we have a bevy, is that a word? We have a lot of younger people asking to be in, which is good, you know.
It's awesome.
But I talked to somebody, this has been probably a year ago or something now, but another kids ministry leader, and I remember him saying he saw a picture of our Sunday school. We have a lot of guys, a lot of men in our Sunday school, and he was like, how do you get so many men to be involved in your Sunday school? And so I was giving some ideas, and then I actually did a session on it in a seminar on recruiting staff. But there's all kinds of different methods and ideas. But one of the things is I ask, you know, I'm like, that person, I bet he would do good. I mean, basically, I asked you, you know, could you be involved? And so those are, I guess, on a much smaller scale than like a pastor, but we have a responsibility to reach out to others and say, hey, let's do more, you know. And then really quick on that point, and I know our timer kind of went on to the next, but, really quick on that point in the learning is, you know, I would just make the assumption that most people listening to this podcast, if they're in Sunday school leadership, have read the Bible, have probably read the Bible through at least once or twice, and know the Bible, and we know a lot of the stories, probably have read all of the stories, maybe don't remember, you know, necessarily every single one, but don't assume, and this is to myself as much as anybody, don't assume that you know everything about the Bible, or even that's like a lot of people say, oh, of course, you know, I don't know everything, but even about the Bible stories, don't assume that you just know everything about the Bible stories. Try to look at it with fresh eyes. And one thing, I mean, we need to study the Bible just outside of Sunday school, not just for like, okay, this is for a lesson, because that's a trap. You know, you can fall into is like you're teaching a Bible study, so you study for the Bible study. You're teaching Sunday school, so you study for that. And doing youth, so you study for that. But if we can, we got to study for ourselves. But also, when we are looking at a Bible story, is one thing that I do sometimes is I think of, because we do so much stage stuff, is I'm like, okay, we've done, what did we do recently? Oh, King Solomon and the 2 women. We've done that so many times, and it's usually the same way. And it's usually funny, although it'd be kind of cool to do it really dramatic. But take a look at the same old story and turn it on its head and say, okay, how can we do this totally different, you know? So, for example, Shaylee was mentioning that we did some split groups, and in her group, it was like only 2 kids knew who Solomon's dad was.
Yeah.
Because when we tell the story, we usually it's isolated. It's like Solomon as king. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was good. Like
I can't tell you how I was in that group. I can't tell you how many kids said Saul.
Oh, really?
Many.
Oh, that's right. You were in that group.
Yeah. So many of the kids said, "Oh, Saul was his dad."
Wow.
I mean,
man, yeah. Ugh. There's another disaster behind the scenes. We're a failure. We're done. What are we doing? Doing a podcast on kids ministry.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that like, oh wow, and then none of. We don't tell the story. I mean,
yeah,
nobody knew who his mother was.
Oh wow, yeah. So we got some teaching to do. We got to shore it up a little bit.
I mean, but it would be interesting how we would be able to tell that story. How Bathsheba is his mom.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I remember, I've cited this before, but I remember way back in the day doing the story of Joseph, and we were doing review questions, and it was so cool. A little boy, we were like, "And what was Joseph's name changed to?" Little boy yells out, "Zaphanath-Phaneah." I was like, yes, he got it.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. So, yeah, all those little details. All right, so number 3 is push harder. And kind of when I wrote this, what I was thinking is that I think that we can often go through the motions, and that sounds like an indictment, and it kind of is. It sounds like really harsh, but I think that we can even be like, there's some value, like the compound effect. We were just talking about the habits. There is some value, I think, in showing up.
Yes. And
going through the motions. I think there is some value in that.
Yeah.
It's better than the guy that says, "Oh, my toe hurts, I can't make it today," or whatever, or sick or whatever. And so there is value in showing up. But if we could go beyond that and show up and push every time, say like, it's like a workout, going that last rep or whatever, the extra, like I was going to do 10, now I'm going to do 11. And so it's kind of like that, is pushing harder. And so we come to Sunday school and we're like, okay, we're going to do this skit or whatever. And we push harder and we say, Brennan's good for this. Brennan will take something, it's like, okay, he's in offering today. And it's like, I come backstage, and he's got all this costume on and all these props. I'm like, what are you doing? It's not Bible story yet, or whatever. He's like, no, this is for offering. Like, oh, okay. And so he pushes, and he kind of makes it happen.
Oh yeah, him with the teddy bear this week.
What was that?
He was a guard. He's just with it. He's always adding. He does an amazing job at always adding something.
Yes. Yeah, he had a teddy bear. I remember hearing him say, because he was talking to John, I think, and he was like, okay, so for the guards, because were you Solomon?
Yeah, I was Solomon.
Yeah. He said, for the guards, do we want to have like 1 dunce or 2 dunces, or and I think it was 3 guards or something.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, so I'll be the dunce or whatever, Yeah, that was excuse me, that was funny.
It was very funny.
Yeah. So anyway, and then you can push, also in praying. There's a acronym somebody did one time, is PUSH, P-U-S-H, pray until something happens.
That's a good one. I don't know if I've heard that one.
Yeah, so
at least if I haven't, it's been a while since I've heard that.
Pray until something happens. So, but yeah, if we push, and just like Pastor does that, and it just has a life thing for him. He's sick, he pushes even harder. If and it's like like I've joked before, like when he's really getting with it or something, we'll talk after, I'll be like, well, you must be sick or something because you preach really good.
Yeah.
Because he'll just go that extra. It's almost like, okay, devil, I'll show you.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, we need a little bit of that in us, is that extra push, just to go that extra mile, push harder. All right, number 4, stay mission focused. Oh, this one gets me. Is that kids? Or is that your phone?
That's not my phone.
Oh, okay. Mics are probably not picking that up.
Yeah, definitely a little voice. I can hear a little voice.
Is it a still small voice? No, it wasn't.
No, not definitely, no.
All right, so stay mission focused. So don't let administrative tasks and daily, like the pressures of just daily life, don't let that distract. And that's so easy.
Oh, my word, yes, it is.
And
100%.
I'm the guy that, like, this is dumb, but I hang scripts up, with the tape or on the clips or whatever, and it drives me nuts if they're not straight. And so I'm the guy that, like, I should be helping somebody with QLab, getting ready, scrambling around, and I'm hanging scripts. So stuff like that, The other thing I've thought about is I used to say this at work sometimes is I had a superintendent that I was under him. I was working for him, but I was like, I would tell him sometimes because he would get so like OCD on something. I would be like, don't major in the minor. Don't major on the stuff that doesn't matter really. And taking a step back on leadership even is really leadership. If we're doing it right, and I'm not saying that we are, but if we're doing it right, then really the people that are on our team should be able to make 80, 90% of the decisions, make it happen and make it flow.
Yeah.
And the real leadership is that development, but also of the team, but also is that the 10% of the time, 15, 20, whatever percent of the time, where you have to make the decision because nobody else can. And so that's a lesson in leadership is, we have to stay focused on our mission and don't get distracted, the administrative tasks, but also just like the urgent stuff, right? Sometimes we do have to respond to things right away, but if we can look at the bigger picture, it's kind of like recently, I can't remember who it was, I was talking with, I think Brother Aaron maybe, and we were talking about like scolding that kid. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, are we getting distracted and saying that kid's not, he doesn't have his hands folded and he's not sitting just like we want him to, and he's picking on somebody.
Yeah.
And there's a balance, obviously. You do have to.
Yeah.
You do have to maintain discipline, but looking at the bigger picture, don't get distracted. You have to stay focused on the mission. What are we trying to do here? Yeah,
that's a good one. My brain is just going right now. Like countless times where I'll admit I have fallen in the trap. I'm trying to do some sort of object lesson in, and you got one or two that I probably could have just let them alone, and it wasn't really distracting that many. But then there's other times like where, unfortunately, you got to step in and break character.
Yeah.
You got to break the
fourth wall.
Yeah, break that fourth wall so that you can correct the situation, so we can move forward in the proper direction, because he or she is being such a distraction.
You were
thinking
about somebody specific. I could tell. You said
I could picture exactly what side. I don't know. It's actually not even a pace. It's just that one side.
I remember listening to a comedian one time, and he said he's talking about church, and he's like, "There's always that one bad kid. You know who it is? That one bad kid." Man.
I feel like we can honestly say we don't have any bad kids. We may have some little troublemakers, but we don't got any bad kids.
Yeah.
I've dealt with some bad kids. I mean, he tried to poke my eyes out.
Yeah.
He was a little bit of a bad kid, but
I remember hearing a story. I don't remember if Brother Tony Spell it was at his church, but I don't remember if he told the story or it might have been somebody else. But like they have a, or did, I think they still do have a thriving bus ministry, and they'd bring in kids, and sometimes they'd be from rival gangs or something, and they'd be like, but they're kids, but they're like still in that lifestyle, and just like fist fights and everything. They're just having church. just make it happen.
Just keep on having church, man.
Oh man, thank God we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah, we don't. No, not
nothing nearly on that level. But yeah, so stay focused on the mission, and that's just an example. Is I think that, and maybe even sometimes that's the work of the enemy, to try to distract us. As we're going into that lesson, and then the teacher could get distracted, and much less the kids. It's the teacher that gets distracted. There's something in public speaking. They talk about this about finding somebody in the audience that responds to you well, and you don't necessarily make eye contact necessarily with them, or you can. I can't remember the rule, but it's basically speak to them. And too often, and I don't know if they wrote this, but I thought about this before, is too often what we do is we focus on that one that seems so bored or so rebellious or so, that's the one we're trying to like get their attention. And instead of, we should just like, okay, you know what, let's focus on these people that are paying attention. Yeah. And so we could do that as Sunday school teachers. Is, I remember a long time ago doing a skit. It was with a crucifixion scene, but we were kind of breezing through it. We weren't, because it wasn't like the main skit or something. I can't really remember. This has been years ago. Okay. This is one of those disasters. And so it was almost like, I don't want to say comedy, but it was kind of like we weren't doing it real serious. We were just kind of going through it. And I glanced over as we're like exiting. I glance over, and there's a girl towards the front, bawling her eyes out, just weeping. Whoa. And I was like, we lost an opportunity right there. We lost it. We weren't focused. We were not mission focused. We were focused on our little thing that we're doing over here. And we can get sometimes so close to our work, and we forget about the big picture. We forget about the mission of what are we actually doing here? What is this kids ministry all about? All right, recap before the timer goes off. So master your morning routine, and that means every day and Sunday. Invest in continuous learning, because that's what leaders need to do and should do. Read books and invest. And then push harder. Go the extra mile. Push.
Make it happen.
Yes.
Whatever you got to do to break out of the rut, to get rid of that plateau, just push a little harder. Yeah. Even if you don't see the results right away, don't get discouraged. Just keep on pushing. Yes, that's good. Yes. And then stay mission focused. All right, well, I think that is our time, so that's a wrap. Sounds good. Let's end the prayer. Yes.